Good morning. Good morning.
I am Dr. Norma Guzman, and that's all. I know. And this is my sister. We are sisters, Dr. Linda Guzman. And for us, it was such a pleasure to be asked by Dr. Gabby to present on the Day of the Dead. We had the opportunity last year to set up the altar at the library with Gabby. So if you don't know about Gabby, think of joining it. So we had that opportunity as well, and doing this morning, we're like, oh, it's so special. So we appreciate it so much, just because it's our tradition as Mexican Latino women. So we appreciate it so much. And so a little overview, because we want to tell you about what the meaning of the altar is, and then when you do the activity, how many people it's going to be in the process for you. The overview, we're going to tell you a little about the history, the purpose of the tradition, the ofrenda, the altar, the meaning and the symbolism of it, the long journey in what the Catrina means, and the levels within your altar, and a little video to kind of wrap it up, and then an activity to give you that hands-on and be able to hopefully start your altar. A little bit about the history. So it all began long ago with the Aztecs. So El Día de los Muertos is an involving holiday that traces its roots back to the Aztec people in what is Mexico. The holiday began almost 3,000 years ago. So it's been celebrated long. The dead is seen for the Aztecs and the Mayans as a natural part of life. So when we think of death, it happens. And it's something that is part of the process of living, but it's also a celebration. There is a deep belief that life should be honored. So it's a way that we're going to honor this person for their life that contribute while they were on earth. Aztecs placed skulls in tree trunks as a way to honor the deceased. That's why you see the skulls all around when we celebrate the Day of the Dead. The celebration starts in November and ends November 1st and ends on November 2nd. And in Catholicism, El Día de los Muertos coincides with All Saints' Day, and the day that celebrates our souls. The purpose of the tradition, so why we do this. It is a celebration of life, not meant to be sad or morbid or somber. It's a tradition largely celebrated across Mexico, Latin America, and the United States. And we always think of, oh, this is a Mexican tradition. It came from us, yes, but a lot of people now around the world celebrate the Day of the Dead. Loved ones create a tribute and altar to the dead as a way to remember and honor them. It's customary to visit cemeteries. So it could be that you do the altar, you go to the cemetery and start setting it up as an altar. Family members clean and loved ones gravestone, so they set it up beautiful. It's you go to the gravestone and you clean it and you set it up. And family members gather around the gravestone and bring food and play music. They tell stories around the tomb to celebrate that person. And the objects that were meaningful to the deceased are brought to decorate the gravestone. So if it's food, if it is flowers, or even clothes, anything that was meaningful to them that you still keep from them.
So I'll talk about a little bit about the ofrendas and altars. So we're using the word kind of in the same meaning for us. Ofrendas is an offering, similar to an altar where we set up and we usually put pictures of loved ones as a way to respect. It is not something we set up to worship. It's really something we set up as a way to remember. Like Norma said, death is a cycle. So it's a cycle of life, and we celebrate life. So for the revelers, maybe you've seen before, just how people set themselves up. Items are placed to identify what the deceased liked. So if it's usually Coca-Cola, if it's sometimes alcohol, if it's food, special traditional food that they love, bread, fruits, just as a way to offer to them a celebration of their memory, of what people remember them from. A lot of the elements, if you're thinking, if I want to create one, what would it have? It usually has like 4 elements. water, fire, earth, and wind, and I'll explain kind of what the symbolism behind it. Participants that usually go and celebrate, they wear costumes, sometimes wear makeup, and bring festive food, play music, and lead parades. So it's really a festivity. It's, again, like Norma said, it's not morbid and sad. Although sometimes people create ofrendas and altars after someone has passed for a bit, and they're now ready to start seeing the celebration portion of it. But it is a great way to grieve and to also to remember your ancestors and loved ones. What do altars usually have? They have photos of people that have been deceased, their personal items, maybe a shirt, something that people remember them by. Again, their favorite food and drinks, their music, and everything is bright colors. So it's not supposed to be dark and sad. It's supposed to be bright and lively. The meaning behind every little thing you kind of see around. So the papel picado, and you're going to get that at the end for yourself as a treat. Norma might want to show it for those who don't know what papel picado is. Papel picado is very traditional. It's cut out tissue paper. So that's like the big version. And then we have the actual paper one, and it's thin tissue paper that is representative of how delicate life is. So that's why it's so thin. And the perforations, the gaps in it of the tissue allows the souls to go through easily. So when you hang that, it just has that symbolism of life. Also, you'll see yellow marigolds, and we have some marigolds over there. They're the typical flower of the dead. And the reason that those are the flowers that symbolize and are usually in the altars is because they're bright. And so it said that it guides the spirits to the altar, their brightness. And also, according to Mexican folklore, the strong scent, if you've ever smelled a live marigold, it's a strong scent. And it says that it as well, it leads the spirit to come. And sometimes even people set up the marigolds around like a path. And if they do it in a grave site, they do like a path, and maybe that path also as well, if they do an altar at home, they put the path towards home to just welcoming those spirits. So in this tradition, spirits is not a scary thing or something to be fearful of. It's really something we welcome and want that visit. We want our loved ones to come and visit us. Calaveras as well, sugar skulls. I know Dr. Gabi got the mini little sugar skulls. Those are a sweet and edible treat as well that you put in the ofrenda. And then the symbolism of the skulls is that the Aztecs and Mayans used to put like real skulls in tree trunks as, again, celebration of that circle of life or that cycle of life. And then candles are also placed. And we have some candles here as well that symbolize light and fire. So again, that positivity, that light in. And the meaning and symbolism with pan de muerto, or bread of the dead, is also placed in the ofrenda, and it is round because it represents a cycle of life and death. Like we are in a constant cycle, and the lines, because I know we're seeing the lines on the bread. Why does it look like that? Those lines are representative of huesos, bones, death, right? But again, it's topped with sugar. It's sweet. Again, death is that cycle of you lived a great life, hopefully, right? You served a purpose. And so that's part of the altar as well. And monarch butterflies, we have some butterflies up here, and hummingbirds. So those usually are placed as a symbol because the ancient Aztecs believed that in afterlife, spirits of the dead return sometimes as hummingbirds or butterflies. You know, see, sometimes people say, oh, a butterfly flew by. It's like, oh, I feel like that's my grandparent, or that's a symbol of someone that I loved. And so again, many Aztecs believe that monarch butterfly had that symbolism when it appeared. Also altars, they have sometimes some salt or a bowl with salt, or just salt sprinkled around. And again, it's about that journey, allowing that soul to be cleansed. And also it is believed that salt protects, right? The soul from corruption and purified, because there's a belief that soul is traveling from the underworld or wherever it is, right? Heaven or purgatory. So that soul is trying to be helped, right? The altar is trying to say, right, we know that there's no perfection of people, right? But you remember them and you love them and you wish them peace. And so that salt has that symbolism. And then also people put incense. And again, that purifies the spirit and elevates the prayers that people have. The smell also attracts the spirits and cleanses. So very similar to where, you know, if you go to church, that smell of incense in the air is very spiritual. And then water is always placed, or a drink, but usually water, because it is believed that the soul is thirsty after, you know, that travel. And so that long journey to come and visit you. And so you have some water there.
And now with the long journey, we have, although people decorate with the deceased's favorite food, it is believed that the spirits do not eat, but instead absorb that essence of food. So it's exactly what Linda's saying, like, oh, why do we put the food? Why do we put, you know, those meaningful little tokens of, why do we do that? So the spirits absorb that essence of favorite food and drinks, the drinks that water after their long journey back to earth. So again, that water is there present. And I know when we did at the altar at Pepperdine here, we didn't think of the water. And Dr. GR was like, we need to bring the water in. And that's now we realize, well, the significance of putting that water, right, through that journey. They're, you know, they're gonna get thirsty. La Catrina. So that would be the picture that you see right here when we see La Catrina. And she's dressed, and we see her now. We see her a little bit more all over the place. But what does that mean? So a Mexican cartoon artist, Jose Guadalupe Posada, created a skeleton art including the now recognized La Catrina. La Catrina is a symbol of an iconic, elegant skull, and she's always very elegant, very well dressed. Posada created La Catrina to remind us to enjoy life and embrace our mortality. Now paints their faces to show that they do not fear death, but accept it as part of the life journey. So that's when we see the makeup. And La Catrina also has it, whether it's very elaborate, it tends to be very elaborate actually. Red lipstick. And that tends to be in colors like pink for happiness. We have pink, happiness. We have red, blood and life, and purple, grief and mourning. And you do see the black as well as meaning of grief and mourning. But when we look at the Day of the Dead in our celebrations, always bright, we enjoy, you know, the presence of that life.
And the face mask and the hair pieces are very intricate.
Yeah.
So I'll talk about the levels. Yeah, the levels of, like, if you want to make your own altar, it could be a little bit intimidating when you see the super fancy ones, but you could do it very simple. And there's different types of ways that you could do it. So an ofrenda must have levels, and most common it has 3, which represents like sky, earth, and underworld. Sometimes people do 2, heaven and earth. Sometimes 3, you have heaven, purgatory, and earth. Purgatory is that place in the middle that sometimes souls are stuck in, and we believe that. We believe that, you know, there was no peace at their death, or maybe they weren't ready. And so that's where the 7-level ofrenda comes in, and that's actually the most traditional one, the big one. And I'll just go over what the 7 levels represent. So the first level, you would have a picture of a saint. So if that person was devoted, if they were Catholic and they have a saint that they followed, like Virgen Guadalupe or any, you put that up there. And then the second level would have the candle and water. The candle would symbolize pretty much telling the deceased spirit, I invite you to come. Because sometimes people that pass, you might not have a great relationship with them in life, right? Or you didn't have some sort of closure, but you have that love for them. So they want to feel welcome to come and visit you. They want to feel that you do want them to come. And you're doing this for them so they can have peace, right? And so you have that light to give them permission to come in. And then that salt, again, on the 3rd level, you could decorate it and put salt, again, to purify them, to make sure that they're good, that their soul's good. Level 4 is the pan de muerto. the symbol of the bread, cycle of life, right? Level 5 is again the favorite food, fruit, drink, whatever you want to put there. And then level 6 is where you put the picture of the deceased person. And lastly, usually when people do the levels, the bottom level is actually on the floor, and they do the across, maybe using the marigolds. And all these levels really symbolize you want that deceased spirit to have peace. The whole point of this is that they have peace and they feel that connection. Now, these levels don't have to be followed exactly. You could be as creative as you want and then Norma will kind of go over certain of the levels, but you could be as creative as you want, but sometimes when you get started, you're like, where do I start? And then this kind of gives you an idea of how to do it.
So here's a little picture of like the levels that I was talking about, right? And what you should have in your altar. But the altar doesn't necessarily have to be that big, that elaborate as you would have, you would see on a picture. It could be as easy as like, for example, this little mini altar someone did. And, that could be a nice symbol for you, whether it was a gift, and then you have this in your altar, or we're gonna have a little tip for you guys, or you can start your little altar with just little things and components that are going to be meaningful. You have like a little tamal here, little bowl. But it's really up to you, because you've seen, nowadays you see so elaborate, beautiful altars. And if you go to, you don't have to go to Rivera Street, right? You could go to like my Linda school. And when you go to her school, that altar has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm like, that's amazing. But again, it's the kids and the family now contributing to it. And then it becomes a big event. Just like we did at Pepperdine when we came down, it became an event of celebration for all of us and putting that altar up. So it doesn't necessarily have to have all these tiers. You could have the components in your altar the way you want to set it up. It could be from a table to, putting the levels of the boxes up, and then you put the
And you
cloth.
could have several different people's pictures.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be, for
One person.
one person. And even now people put animals, right? Pets that have passed away, any spirit that you've loved, right? Any spirit that has touched you. It doesn't even have to be a relative, someone that's touched your life and you want to remember them and you want to make sure that their spirit is always in peace and remembered. It's always really special. And I know that Dr. GR had shared that her altar started very little, right? And slowly you start kind of building it, and every year you're like, okay, I'm going to put this symbol. And even the activity we're going to do, it's mini. So something special that you want to do for yourself to remember a loved one.
So we wanted to find also like a video, a short little video that would show you the celebrations that occur when we look at the Day of the Dead.
To be clear, the Day of the Dead is not Mexico's version of Halloween. Rather, it's a celebration that honors those who passed and brings comfort to those left behind. Here's ABC's John Quinones.
Beauty, respect, honor. Dia de los Muertos. In English, it's Day of the Dead. But for these thousands of celebrants, it also means a loving tribute to life itself. Here at this cemetery in Los Angeles, Jose Romero and his family have been busy at work. They've been building an altar called an ofrenda for his late brother, Victor Hugo, with their mother, Hortensia, looking on. He was her son, era su hijo. Nunca se le va a olvidar. You'll never forget it. When I came here this morning, she says, I shed a few more tears. He was a very good man. Victor died of cancer 6 years ago, and there's a very special reason Jose calls this altar coming home. You brought him with you?
Yes. I was like taking him out, enjoy the last days of his life. Like 30 minutes later, he showed up at my door and he said, just go. He enjoyed everything.
So he passed away knowing what all this was about.
Yes. And he turned around and said, are you going to do that for me?
Their family is one of nearly 80 families who created these beautiful, touching altars. It's all part of Hollywood Forever, a festival and altar competition in Los Angeles. It's believed to be the largest Dia de los Muertos celebration outside of Mexico.
Aztec mythology, they say that after 30 years, your soul. Yeah, so it's always been pretty good on the 4th year. Like this is the next 2. So we decided to do a tribute to people in home, wherever it may be.
Cielito lindo de contrabando. This means life for me.
Right.
Yes, I think this tradition has a very deep meaning because for years we experience life.
Dia de los Muertos started more than 3,000 years ago in Mexico with the Aztecs, who saw death as an ever-present part of life.
Not only do Mexicans, but just Latin American people in general now celebrate Dia de Muertos. The belief is that our loved ones who have passed, their souls come back to visit us for a couple of days and celebrate with us.
Dia de los Muertos, what does it mean to you?
An opportunity that we set aside from all the drama of the world to have a moment to rekindle our loved ones' memories and their love, to feast on the food that they loved, and to come as a community, as a familia, in that celebration.
This is not just for Latinos.
Definitely not. I've actually had a lot of people ask me today, like, is it okay that we partake? Is it okay that we come and we get our faces painted and we wear the crowns? And I think just asking that in the first place is like, you're coming from a place of respect.
I just love the celebration of this life. Just like in my culture, like we don't really celebrate that in life. I just feel like that. And so it's therapeutic for me.
Much of the rest of the world learned about this special holiday with the Disney movie Coco.
Dia de los Muertos is the one night of the year our ancestors can come visit us.
As part of the tradition, families build custom altars honoring the unique traits of those who have passed on, including their loved ones' favorite food and drinks. The altars are also adorned with monarch butterflies and thousands of cempasúchils, marigolds, known as the flower of the dead. Legend has it that the bright colors of the petals of the marigold and their strong scent help guide the souls of the departed from the cemetery to their family homes. Angie Jimenez is director of altars for this special celebration at the cemetery.
The theme this year, it's Quetzalcoatl, and Quetzalcoatl is synonymous with rebirth. And since we've been living through a pandemic, we feel that a lot of folks that have either suffered from depression, from being at home and away from their loved ones. Some folks lost their jobs. A lot of us lost some family members.
This year, the celebration is even more profound because of the devastating impact COVID has had on the Hispanic community. Ilian Herrera Pepita lost her cousin to COVID this summer. And just before that, she lost her beloved husband, John, to cancer. He was just 30 years old.
This is our altar called Muertos Forever. So if you enter our banner, this is my cousin Giovanni, and that's my husband John, his banner.
Her altar is a labor of love. She's been assembling it with her 2 sons, JT and Noah, 5 and 2 years old.
So if you enter the tree of life that I think a lot of people have been loving. People have been writing down like their loved ones' names and like this little messages.
By nightfall, spiritual processions bring native dances, incense, music, stirring drum beats echoing throughout the cemetery. It's been a full day of remembrance as the altars competition comes to an end. Jose's Coming Home is awarded the prize for Best Contemporary Altar.
I am surprised and grateful that Hollywood Forever gives us the opportunity to share my brother's story.
The awards aside, this celebration is all about gratitude for loved ones who have graced our lives and then departed. Always way too soon.
I don't want to kids who forget them, and that's, you know, gotta be strong for them, so they don't forget their dad. So this altar for me is just kind of just another step in the grieving process. Trying to accept our new life without him for now.
Our thanks to John Quinones. What a celebration. Hi, everyone. George.
So now what we're gonna do is that little activity. And with that activity, it's intended for you to be able to start your altar. So we have a couple of things that you can select from here. We have a little box. So for this little box, you can put an intention or something special from someone or a little picture, whatever you would want. You could choose anything you want. We have different types of little boxes too, again, that you can select to start your altar. We wanted to have crosses because our altar does have a cross. So we also have crosses for you to take. We have frames that you can add your picture as well to start your altar of your loved one. And you could decorate it any way you would want. We have some glitter to paint, make it your own to begin your altar. A little bit of flowers we're going to cut. So if you want to put a flower onto your box or your cross. And that is the Day of the Dead, and that's the beginning of you can begin your altar and the meaning of what you're going to do. I hope we keep that tradition. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Wow. Does anyone have any questions before we start a fun activity? Before you start painting? Yes.
For whatever reason, in society, it's negative connotation. And unfortunately, I didn't come this far, and I just wanted to come in person. I didn't Google it all, but it's a different meaning than hearing from someone who actually this is your practice and telling about the glory that it brings. I had no idea that that's actually what it meant. Because unfortunately, in my culture, in my family, if anyone sees a skull, they automatically think evil.
Right.
You know, what can I do on my end to try to help break down some of that? You know, when I go home and try to share it, so I understand it doesn't mean that at all. And I'm actually listening to this and I'm thinking it's probably something we should be doing because it seems like it's kind of gives you a little bit of a relief. So I'm just wondering, where did that come from? The evil attachment.
I think when people think it's Halloween, right? And then, you know, some people think, you know, Halloween is bad or Halloween is scary. This is more saying we understand that we have a cycle in life and we know for sure we're all going to end up like that. That's one guarantee you have in life. There's not other guarantees in life we have, right? We don't have a lot of guarantees, but that's one. And really saying we remember those that we love. And I think a lot of people do it, you know, they put candles of a loved one. But I think sometimes there's a negative, like you said, connotation or idea that we're worshiping evil or we dress like this, you know, to taunt, you know, Satan or things like that. And it's really, no, it's really saying, you know, like that particular story of that woman, she's a young mom and she needs to have her sons not forget their father. And if it's saying having a picture of him and talking about him, but maybe having something where they remember what he liked. And that, I think that's really important. And I always, with the little ones, remind them of the movie Coco, because it is really an adorable movie where you don't want to forget your grandparents and you don't want to forget, because as we continue our lives and we're all busy, we do forget, right? And then for some people, grief is very different. It comes in different stages and different waves. So I think just letting them know that don't look at the exterior of like the skull and look at more the meaning of it. And it's really like a celebration of life, kind of like when I've gone to, you know, funerals, sometimes people put music and other people are like, oh my gosh. And it's a celebration of life though, right? Because that person was here and they served the purpose. And everyone grieves differently. And like the gentleman said, it is our belief that after 4 years, the spirit finds its home, right? Because they're kind of having to figure out where they're going, right? It's a process. And it's just saying, we're here praying for them. It's the same as someone might pray for someone that they loved. Right. Because we're skulls, right? We have I made at home. Yeah.
So at the end.
It's kind of accepting what our faith are and saying, I know where I'm going to end up, but I'm going to live a great life and I'm going to remember those who are already there and you're going to see them again, right? For those who have that faith, the belief that you're going to see your loved one again is a positive thing, right? So that's kind of and the cartoonist obviously created la Catrina, right? And it also talks about,
scary.
yeah, and it also talks about status, right? Because in Mexico, there's a status level of like those who have and have nots. And so she's very like, out there type of thing. So it's kind of that making kind of like a fun activity, like a parade, like a.
But I think it's like the media that made it negative, that negative. And I know we've had instances where even at our schools, we've had parents, oh, you put skulls up, or why is this whole, it's very negative. So then we have to sit, even though it might be a religious institution. And you would think, again, that they would know the meaning of the altar, the process, but some of us don't. Even though we might be Latinos, they come and question it. Oh, you put skulls. Oh, there's sometimes Black intel to it too, right? Oh, it just looks bad. Like, why are we doing that? And then we go through the process of explaining to them what the meaning of it, right? The meaning of life.
And it's also, lastly, the most important part is we're calling it an English altar because that's kind of like the word that most people understand. But for us, it's an ofrenda, no, not an altar. Altar for us is where you put a saint maybe and you pray, right, to God. For us, an ofrenda, we're not worshiping the person, or we're not, we're praying for them. We're celebrating them. So for us, it's an ofrenda, an offering, like I remember you type of thing, ofrenda. So it's an offering, not a worship thing type of thing. And sometimes people think that, right? Because of how it's set up. Right.
Turn it into worshiping the soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Right. Just tell them we're worshiping the bread that.
They're literally saying,
Yeah.
wrong information.
Right.
And see
Mm-hmm.
instead of
Yeah. And they clean it up because, I mean, we all live the busy lives, right? You can't sometimes, go every day, but you go and that specific day, or even for birthdays, people do it. For birthdays, you go, you clean the gravesite, the tomb, and you're there to celebrate that person and not remember their spirit and not forget them. So it's a positive light for us. It's really about that light. Yeah. Or even like a little intention, right? To put like a box, like say, I have a positive intention for that loved one.
Because it doesn't have to be elaborate. Right. It could be as simple as you want to make it with something, start your, that altar, that ofrenda for someone, and just put a picture.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yes.
I wanted to say, it's really interesting because I'm kind of looking at it too, and I'm understanding it from how we do it. It's like for us in our religion, it's obviously a little bit different. We don't do the offerings and stuff, but when somebody dies, there are always people that come and put flowers over the grave. The grave is decorated. We also use incense. So a lot of times we'll have incense on that person's grave, and we're there and we're also praying. Like just like what you said, we're not worshiping, that we're praying, and we believe that when we pray, and we're asking God, for stuff, we believe that because we're there in that person's grave, that our prayer is going to go from that person to God, right? Like to be,
It's closer, yeah.
Like that. So it's not like the similarities in that, and also like you said, our students or saints, we have all like special shrines for them. Like people will literally go and they have their caskets adorned with like the Arabic things and stuff, and we go and like we're not praying to them, but we go there and we're like praying, and we have incense, all of that, just to like say that this is where these holy people are, and we're making sure that our prayers are going there and that they're going to help be that vessel to bring the prayer over to God. And so it's kind of interesting in that sense. We don't do the offerings and we don't have any of that stuff. That's something we're not really supposed to be doing. But the other stuff, it's really similar, and I was thinking, wow, you know, we do a lot of these similar. Yeah.
And sometimes people have incense at home, right? They're like, you know what, let me cleanse this. Whatever, let me, like, you know, it's a cleansing, it's a positive, yeah.
Brings the angels. The
Mhm.
angels are around us. We always have angels. but
Yeah.
The incense helps attract the good spirits, the angels, and so like it just makes the house, you know, more. It feels more blessed and more holy. And I know, like in the Hindu religion too, they do that. They use incense a lot for their prayers. So yeah, so we do that too, which is really interesting. I mean, not for prayers, but to bring in that positivity and stuff.
And then when you realize we're not so different. when you think about
Right.
us, That's what we
Right.
are too. We're not so different. Bring everything together, right? And something like this. Exactly what you said.
I have a comment and then a question. The first comment, I appreciate you explaining about the skulls because, for example, I am from another Latin American country, Catholic,
Mhm.
and we have the Dia de los Muertos. We call it Day of the Soul in the November the 2nd, where we go to the to the cemetery. We do our flowers, candles, etc., but not skulls, right? And more recently, we had those beautiful, colorful skulls because we had the same idea raising up that, you know, those dark
Mhm.
skulls, they are something connected to evil or death in a negative way. But more recently, I see that happen more and more, and people also wearing not only for, you know, specific occasions, but you can see that in clothes, etc. So this is my comment. And a curiosity that I have is about the places you put the altar and why I am asking that. I like to observe what is going on in the surroundings, and I observed this morning when I was coming here, an altar in a place over the road, and that's interesting. Let's see what I learned today about that. And I remember back when I went to Mexico and I drove from Ciudad de Mexico to Acapulco, and there was a lot of altars over the road. So what is the meaning of that? And why I am asking that is, you know, to try to understand the culture. For us there, we put crosses or flower when where a person really died in an accident or something like that. But it doesn't seem to be the occasion because they are in not, you know,
Not home or not where you want
yeah,
them, yeah.
it is more like, you know, so is there any meaning for the place people put to the
So for
altar?
Dia de los Muertos, yes, the goal would be to place it in a place where people are gonna see it. So like when we did the library here, you know, students could see it, could share if they want to share, especially because this is their home when they're students and traveling. Most people do it in their homes or even outside their home. If you go to Olvera Street, they do it more publicly, kind of like what we saw here in Hollywood. They set up the altar so other people could see and see the tradition. And the ones you see in the street usually are because the person has died there most recently, and it's just kind of guiding the soul, like kind of showing like there was a life here lost. And also, you know, it kind of also warns people like, hey, you know, maybe people were driving fast or something happened here. So it's just that is more of that moment part. And then sometimes, you know, people feel like they want to not forget what happened here. You know, sometimes when big things happen to people, it's especially in the Latin community, it's like someone was lost here, someone important was lost here. Because sometimes when things happen like that in the street, it's like, oh, it's another person, right? But sometimes it's someone valuable to someone has passed here. So that's a little bit different, but it's not necessarily like celebrating, it's celebrating their life, but it's also more saying like something has happened here and I want to call attention to it. But for November 1st and 2nd, it's that All Souls Day where we're just doing it, you know, to connect with people and to share, because I think that's something that everyone has in common, grief. I think that's something that connects all.
And it could be for someone they're
Right.
celebrating always, because I was, we were just driving somewhere to it. And I told her, that also will, you know, we would see as an altar or it's been there, and wherever the
And
family
like a
is,
painting of
and
the
like a
face.
painting,
Yeah.
it just,
Yeah.
it's always there, present, and it's been years. But whoever that family member is, they go, and at some point they just wanted to celebrate them, like something did happen, my person was here. And like, let's not forget whoever that person is. So I could see it being offered as an altar for someone, like, don't forget them. And it becomes with your family, because it's your family, your friends.
Ladies, thank you for the presentation. It was really nice, really beautiful, a lot of learning, even for myself. I also identify as Mexicana,
Yeah.
Mexican American. I had a question. Would you mind before the end of today sharing some like events that you really recommend for Dia de los Muertos? I know you mentioned Olvera
Oh,
Street
there's,
and Hollywood
yeah.
Boulevard. Like if there's like a few that you're like, oh yeah, these are really good. Because I'm interested in like the face painting and if they like make coronas.
Yeah, we could tell you, we've gone to a few places with friends and
And
it's always
East LA too, they have a lot of.
something, and you know, it's traditions that like sometimes even we are learning because our friends, when we go to these events of the other ones, so they get the incense and I'm like, and I go, oh, I don't think, and I go, I don't think I need that. And they're like, you need it, girl. So yeah, we'll definitely share with you fun places because it is fun. It is a fun activity.
Yeah, I'd like to actually recommend that event that was in the video.
Yeah, Hollywood Forever.
I've
Yeah.
never done it.
I've never, it looks
It's amazing.
cool.
I've been a couple times.
Oh.
It's amazing. It's all day long and there's music like you saw and it's just so amazing. And it's an amazing cemetery too. There's some really interesting people buried there, like dog Toto from has his tombstone there from the Wizard of Oz. And so it's a really fascinating place and it's very festive and welcoming, lots of food and face painting and all that stuff. So yeah, I highly recommend.
It feels like a lot of us are doing it in Boston. I mean, in our schools, when we have our schools, we've made a event out of it. The whole kind of like half a day, painting, flowers, everything you can imagine. For the kids.
And it allows the conversation of such a taboo subject, right? Yeah. Like, no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to be near it. So it kind of like brings that in. So we're gonna have paint and stuff for people to grab what you want. We have paint. Make
We
it
have
as bright as you
Make
want.
it your own. You know, you can take whatever you want and make
Yeah.
your own and there's a paint and you just have to grab water so that we.
You can wash your brushes.
But please, enjoy.